There's a lot of things to love when it comes to the NFL. From one-handed touchdown catches and plays that will make your jaw drop, to hits so hard that their ancestors probably felt them. There's celebrating with your teammates, or at least trying to. And there's also underdogs who've defied all the odds. And don't forget about the fans and the diehards. But you know what I love the most in the NFL? Rivalries. Now, just a quick note before we start off, this video is not going to be about team rivalries. We already know enough about them. And when I say individual rivalries, I'm not talking about Peyton Manning versus Tom Brady, stuff like that. Why? Well, because they didn't hate each other. Sure, they had countless matchups against one another, but there was never anything that personal between the two. It was just business as usual. Today, we're focusing on the beef, the hatred, the reasons why certain players can't stand each other. Today, we're focusing on the NFL's top 5 individual rivalries since 2000.
Choose your character.
For many years, the Ravens and Patriots had two things in common. The first, both teams consistently sat atop of the AFC during the Flacco and Brady era. And the second, neither team liked each other, especially Terrell Suggs and Tom Brady. It seems like their beef started back in 2009 when the Patriots defeated the Ravens 27-21 in a Week 4 matchup. During the game, Suggs grazed Brady's leg, and Brady, being the brave soldier that he is, pointed and started screaming to the official. The official would end up throwing the penalty flag. Let's take a look at this horrendous hit. Yeah, no wonder T-Sizzle was livid. Luckily for Suggs, he would get revenge on Brady later that year, racking up a strip sack as the Ravens won in their wildcard matchup in Foxborough 33-14. But that was only the beginning. A year later, during the 2010 season, Brady and Suggs would meet again. Words were exchanged both during the game and after the Patriots' 23-20 win. Suggs referred to Brady as Hollywood and Pretty Boy. He then stated he just better hope he don't see us again. And in typical Brady fashion, he responded saying, "They talk a lot for only beating us once in 9 years." Well, he wasn't wrong. Brady was 4-1 against the Ravens at this time. The feud continued for years as Suggs lashed out in the media, calling Brady's 3 Super Bowl victories questionable due to the Tuck roll call and the Spygate incident. Now, the beef since has slowly settled down as Suggs claims that he has matured since his early years. Tom Brady even offered to send him some of his Uggs to soften him up before a game. Alright. Let's move on to number 4.
Choose your character.
At number 4, we have a little bit of a unique situation on our hands. These weren't rivals on other teams. Donovan McNabb and Terrell Owens had one of the biggest beefs on the same team. We'll start in the beginning of the 2004 season. After consistently lobbying around for other teams to trade for him, Donovan McNabb put in a good word for the Philadelphia Eagles to acquire the wide receiver. The two were officially teammates. After starting the season 7-0, the Eagles dropped their first game of the year in a 27-3 loss to the Pittsburgh Steelers, which led to this. Although Owens claimed to the media they were blowing it out of proportion, it's a little surprising to see McNabb's response to this. In that same year, other feuds would take place between the former BFFs, including one instance where McNabb, actually, I'll let Owens do the talking.
So I go back to the huddle and I was like, dude, I was open. You know what his response to me was?
I know what his response was, but go ahead, tell Skip.
Shut the F up, okay?
But even after all of the drama and a broken leg that Owens suffered against the Cowboys, the Eagles won the NFC Championship and were Super Bowl bound, in which Owens, after less than 50 days of recovery time, would suit up for. The Eagles ultimately lost 24-21, but McNabb took another L, giving football fans the infamous image of him puking on their final touchdown drive. Now, although McNabb was hoping people would forget about it, Owens wouldn't. He then pleaded for a new contract because he felt like his current one was disrespectful. When asked why he thought this, he stated, "Because I wasn't the man who got quote-unquote tired in the Super Bowl." McNabb then responded saying, "Keep my name out of your mouth." Another day, another shot fired between the two. This led to the two not speaking to each other for the entire rest of the offseason. In the beginning of the 2005 season, Owen started taking shots at everyone, including McNabb, the front office, and even the fans. He even got involved in fights with teammates during training camp, including one time getting into it and almost fighting Donovan McNabb one-on-one. This led to a suspension, half-assed apologies, and ultimately his contract getting terminated by the Eagles. His days in Philly were over, but the rivalry between the two, yeah, it was just getting started. Owens had the chance to sign with multiple teams, but of course signed with the Eagles' most hated division rival, the Dallas Cowboys. In all 3 years, the wide receiver eclipsed 1,000 or more yards, giving fans touchdowns, electric celebrations, and this.
It's my team. It's my quarterback. And if you guys do that, man, it's unfair.
Now let's fast forward to the present day. Yes, this year, the beef is still alive. McNabb sat down with Bleacher Report and touched on the collapse of that team. McNabb explained his frustration with Owens, sharing his thoughts about what the team could have done if he would have got his act together. And Terrell Owens, being, well, Terrell Owens, gave us this amazing response. He also took some personal shots at McNabb's DUI history, giving us the image that, yeah, it's still pretty heated. Even though bringing up the DUI is a little bit of a cheap shot, I'd still have to give the win to Owens this round. Bringing up the famous Campbell's Chunky Soup commercials is a knockout blow. It is a shame considering how good the two were together. In 22 games, they posted a 17-5 record. In that stretch, Owens had over 130 catches, 2,085 yards, and 20 touchdowns. But thanks to massive egos and short tempers, they never reached their full potential, and they never will.
Choose your character.
Describing it as a temper tantrum doesn't do justice when talking about Odell Beckham's actions versus Josh Norman. Beckham completely lost it, which is why this masterpiece takes the 3 spot in the rankings. On December 20th, 2015, the 14-0 Panthers were taking on the 6-8 Giants in the Meadowlands. Wide receiver Odell Beckham and cornerback Josh Norman were both having spectacular seasons coming into Sunday's game. Many regarded each of them to be at the top of their positions. This led to excitement all over from a pure talent perspective. I mean, who doesn't love to see the best go at it? And we did see them go at it, just not like we expected them to. Less than 2 minutes into the game, Beckham burnt Norman down the field in what looked to be a surefire touchdown. Only it wasn't. Norman taunted Beckham even though he got smoked, and Beckham fired right back at him, even though he dropped a wide open touchdown. It's a bit of a weird flex, but on with the show. But why were they so heated right off the bat? I guess it could have to do with the fact that the two were jawing at each other earlier in the week, but it's not like Josh Norman brought a bat. You know what? Let's just get back to the game. On the very next play, OBJ went right after Norman, which caused the cornerback to switch from the verbal route to a more physical one. The refs separated the two, and it looked like it would just be another case of some friendly banter. Until a few plays later, Beckham loaded up and delivered a nice little headbutt to his friend Norman. The refs separated the two on the turf, as this was already the 3rd time the two got into it. So, 3rd time's a charm, right? It was all love after that? Yeah. Sure. I mean, we were still in the first quarter. How many fights were in store for these two?
Not 3, not 4, not 5.
Throughout the game, each player kept throwing shot after shot. And after nearly blowing a 28-point lead, the Panthers kicked a last-second field goal and won, improving to 15-0 on the season. Beckham would be suspended for a game, but it seemed like it was over. I mean, Norman wasn't in Beckham's division. Alright, I'm done predicting. It looked like brighter days were in store. The feud would slowly die as division rivals, but not before a few more exchanges between the two. And it looks like it's officially over now since Beckham missed both games versus Washington in 2017, and he's now out of the division playing for the Cleveland Browns. So the rivalry was short and sweet. Well, at least for us, but the amount of hate and physicality gives it the number 3 spot on this list.
Choose your character.
Aqib Talib's made it known that he's been one of the top cornerbacks in the NFL throughout his career. But he's also been known for something else, and that is he is not afraid to scrap with the opposing wide receiver, especially Michael Crabtree. This rivalry started back in the 2016 season, during a Week 16 matchup between the Oakland Raiders and the Denver Broncos. The actual game itself was anything but exciting, but when it came to the matchup between Talib and Crabtree, well, take it away, T.O.
Get your popcorn ready.
During the game, Talib ran over to Crabtree near the sideline and snatched off his chain around his neck. His reason why? Well, because Crabtree had been wearing the chain all year, and it had been growing on Talib. Finally, Talib said he had enough of it. Alright, not the most justifying answer in the world, but you do you. Was there an actual reason why Talib snatched it? If there was, well, no one was aware of it. I guess there could have been some in-game jawing between the two players, but this was their first incident. Now, as much as Talib was laughing, Crabtree on the other hand was not impressed with his actions. When asked about the incident, Crabtree responded, "I really don't like 21 though. I think he's fake. You aren't tough. You aren't defending anybody up like that. You're acting. You're snatching chains up on the field. What do you accomplish? Are you hard? Are you tough?" In this matchup, Crabtree took the higher road and didn't retaliate, due to the fact that he said he didn't want to get kicked out of the game. And even though he shared with the media that he did indeed want to hit the cornerback, he made a business decision for his team. In this instance, he was right, but this beef takes a number 2 spot in the rankings, so we know damn well this wouldn't be the last incident between the two. Let's fast forward to November 27th, 2017, where the Broncos and Raiders met up once again. Less than 5 minutes into the game, Crabtree and Talib would find each other again, only this time, neither would take the high road. Multiple punches were thrown between the two as their teammates tried to hold them back, but they kept finding each other on different parts of the field. Sure, there was beef between the two that carried over from the last game, but it also didn't help that Crabtree and Broncos cornerback Chris Harris Jr. also got into it at the beginning of this game. After being helped off the field, Harris shared his thoughts on Crabtree during the postgame. He said Crabtree took a cheap shot at him and injuring him in the process. This was the only clip that I could find, and it doesn't look that bad, but I'll let you guys be the judge of it. All in all, it was just more fuel added to the fire. But let's get back to Talib and Crabtree. Both players kept going at each other even after the officials tried breaking it up. But one thing remained the same. Talib was once again a successful chain snatcher. You almost have to give Aqib Talib props. Not only did he manage to grab Crabtree's chain once again, but he managed to do it even after the wideout taped it to his body. Now, aside from the whole my chain incident, my favorite part of this individual rivalry has to be this clip right here. The referees knew these two had prior beef, yet no one is focusing on the two trying to knock each other's heads off. Somehow the only thing they are focused on is every single player not named Aqib Talib or Michael Crabtree. So kudos to you, NFL officiating, kudos to you. Although this rivalry didn't have the longest duration on this list, the pure hatred from one another cannot be beat by many, which is why this chain snatcher rivalry takes the number 2 spot in this video.
Choose your character.
There are many reasons why I put the rivalry between Vontaze Burfict versus Juju, AB, and well, pretty much the entire Steelers team at the top spot. One may ask, how could a single player have this much beef with so many different other players? Well, look no further, because this one-man wrecking crew single-handedly destroyed a potential Super Bowl team. Let's start it from the top at the 2015 season, where the Cincinnati Bengals took on the Pittsburgh Steelers in a Week 8 matchup. In the second quarter, Le'Veon Bell caught an out route from Ben Roethlisberger and was wrapped up and tackled awkwardly by everyone's favorite Bengal at the time, Vontaze Burfict. Bell would end up tearing his MCL as the Steelers lost their bell cow running back for the remainder of the year. Now, Bell's teammates later explained to reporters and claimed that Burfict and other Bengals were mocking the injury and were laughing at him trotting across the field. Sure, this hit doesn't really look intentional, but this was the second straight year now that Le'Veon Bell would be knocked out for the season due to an injury versus the Bengals. And if his teammates were telling the truth about the Bengals mocking Bell's injury, then it would be easy to understand some frustration building on Pittsburgh's side. Unfortunately for them, this was only the beginning. Burfict's next target seemed to be quarterback Ben Roethlisberger, not only once, but twice. The Bengals met up with the Steelers again during a Week 14 matchup. After taking the snap and dropping back, he was hit by two Bengals players. Only this wasn't any ordinary hit. Big Ben would end up separating his shoulder on the play. The reason why? Well, the awkward landing might have been caused by, I don't know, a certain someone diving low into the ankles, but hey, what do I know? Now, the good news for Burfict, they didn't rule a penalty on the field. But the bad news, Pittsburgh would end up winning by 13, and this made their team even more furious than before, as teammates refused to acknowledge and even shake Burfict's hand after the game. But thankfully, division rivals are only scheduled to play twice during the season, so at least the beef would have a chance to settle down. Just kidding. Pittsburgh and Cincy would face off once again in the AFC wildcard game, and once again, there was drama surrounding Vontaze Burfict and the Steelers. Towards the end of the third quarter, the Steelers had built up a 15-0 lead, so frustration was likely starting to kick in for the Bengals. On a third down, Burfict once again found his way to Roethlisberger, taking him to the ground. But it was what the linebacker did after the play that rubbed many the wrong way. After the sack, Burfict lunged back his knee and then shoved it right into Roethlisberger's shoulder. Yeah, the same shoulder that Burfict separated a few weeks back. I mean, how much more would the NFL officials or even the Steelers take of this? It seemed like the only way Burfict would get tossed would be by doing something ridiculously cheap and disturbing. Well, yeah, that's exactly what would end up happening. On Pittsburgh's final drive, Burfict lined up and absolutely leveled a defenseless Antonio Brown running across the middle of the field. It looked bad at first, but after watching the replay, it only looks that much worse. The illegal hit pushed Pittsburgh into field goal range, but the damage was already done. Not only was Le'Veon Bell out now, but Antonio Brown would miss the next playoff game as well, as the Steelers would end up falling 23-16 to the Peyton Manning-led Broncos. 4 injuries caused by Vontaze Burfict during the 2015 season, and no real sign of retaliation by Pittsburgh. Something had to be coming, right? Well, enter Juju Smith-Schuster. During the 2017 season, Schuster and the Steelers traveled to Cincy during a December matchup. Le'Veon Bell caught a pass during the middle of the game and started running to the sideline, when out of nowhere, Burfict got absolutely demolished by Schuster as the wideout stepped over him and stared directly at him. Burfict was then taken into concussion protocol as reports came out that he was livid with the young player's hit. Now, although this is a dirty retaliation move by the wideout, the whole situation has been, well, what goes around ends up coming right back around, only a lot harder. This rivalry managed to stay alive in the 2018 season as well, as Burfict concussed Antonio Brown again, which then resulted in an $112,000 fine. But it seems like we finally have a bright spot. Roethlisberger is on the Steelers, Bell is a Jet, and now Antonio Brown and Vontaze Burfict are both free agents. That's what it took for this rivalry to finally die down. And that's why it cemented itself as the #1 spot in this rivalry ranking.